Thank you very much for those words of introduction. When I was invited to come to TEDxIITKanpur, and I must say to all of you that this is the first time that I have been at an IIT. This is a confession of sorts. I was told that the theme for this evening's talks and addresses would be outliers. And I went out and I must confess diligently read Malcolm Gladwell's book in order to understand, because in my rather elementary form of reasoning, an outlier meant somebody who was outside the pale, but who did extraordinary things, of course. And I think in some sense that did correspond to what Gladwell had in mind. And many of you, I know, the IITians are outliers because you represent extraordinary levels of achievement, your hard work, your backgrounds, your upbringings, all of them correspond to the definitions mentioned in Gladwell's book. And I'm reminded in this context, in a slightly lighter vein, you all know the comic strip Dilbert, which you read in the American newspapers, and there is a character called Ashok in that comic. And he is from, no prizes for guessing, from the IIT, one of the IITs. And he is working hard 24/7, and he puts all his other mostly American colleagues to shame. And one of them asks him at one point, how do you manage, how do you work in this superhuman fashion? And his answer, and which is still imprinted in my mind so many years after I read it, is that I'm from the IIT and we are trained only to sleep on national holidays. So, outlier, definitely. Now, in my career, I told you that I came in literally as an outsider. And a few years into my service, I came to study China. And it was a turning point in my life, literally. It was about 22 years after the conflict, the border conflict with China, of which I'm sure many of you have read about and are aware about from television documentaries and the media. It was about 22 years after that conflict, and relations between India and China were still in a state of, I would say, a freeze. I wouldn't call it a Cold War, because I think the guns had fallen silent, and there was very little exchange between the two countries. And I want to illustrate this point because all of you may at some point in your careers be faced with a choice like this. I was asked whether I would like to join the China desk. And it was at a time when really not much attention was being paid to that relationship, because the memories of the conflict still lingered. Our nation had been quite traumatized by that, the effect of that conflict and what transpired during that conflict. There was very little communication between the two governments. Our diplomats had been ill-treated during the Cultural Revolution, and all said and done, it was a very quiet desk. But somehow, I had always been drawn, let me say, to the study of frontiers, to the study of boundaries, to the study of borders, to the study of the Himalayas. Mr. Chandan Mitra just talked about, our concept of nationhood, and from where we draw our strength, our inspiration, and our sustenance. And I think for all of us, I would say, it is from the Himalayas and from the oceans that surround us. So when I got this opportunity to study China, it was mainly from this point of view. I wanted to know more about the Tibetan borderlands, I wanted to know about the Himalayas, and perhaps diplomacy was at the back of my mind, but this is what drew me to the study of China. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd taken in my life, because my career really got rooted in that study. And it was just that decision I took at that time. It was not that I was compelled to take it, but I just felt drawn to this whole imaginary construct that I had developed in my mind about this neighbor next door. And then when the reality evolved and the relationship began to look up, we had the visit of Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi to China in December 1988. A very, very brave decision, because we had tensions on the border resulting from a Chinese intrusion into one of our border areas. And just to illustrate again what the ability to take risks means, what it means to have the courage and the conviction to take such decisions. So just as I saw this whole relationship begin to come alive, we had this visit of Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi to China. And that is really what became a watershed. Again, decisions taken perhaps with adequate foresight, I would say, because you wanted to prevent conflict, you wanted to reduce tensions. But I think nobody ever foresaw that that one visit would really set the trend and the pace for what transpired in India-China relations after that. So 28 years almost since that visit happened, but you have the terrain of India-China relations literally mapped as a result of that political initiative that happened at that time in December 1988. And subsequently, there were political leaders in India who had the courage and foresight to take this forward, despite the fact that our basic problems on the border with China, there are territorial differences, yet are unsolved. But what we've been able to achieve is that we have seen not a single shot fired on that border. We have seen confidence-building measures between the two sides. We have seen leadership-level dialogue. We've seen trade and commerce being built between the two countries. We've seen a traffic of ideas and people. We have about 10 to 12,000 Indian students studying in China today. So while the assumption or the impression that many have in our country that this relationship with China is still, conflicted in so many ways, we must also understand that there has been so much that has happened that has resulted in our being able to manage this relationship much better. So diplomacy is not only about these historic outreaches that happen from time to time, but it's also hewing the wood and drawing the water, literally working towards step-by-step building of relations. So I think, all of you who are outliers must also understand that what Gladwell says about those 10,000 times being able to practice at something applies to relationships like this, which are very complex and very sensitive. You have to work at it. You cannot give up hope, but you should also be able to take risks and have the conviction that you will succeed. I would like to bring another instance up. A couple of years ago, in 2011, we had the crisis in Libya, the beginning of the crisis, really. It hasn't culminated. We are seeing so much confusion in the Middle East today. But we had about 20,000 Indians stranded in Libya. And I happened to be the foreign secretary of the government at that time, and we were faced with this near-crisis situation of having to bring all these expatriates, Indian expatriates, safely back to India. Communications had literally broken down. Our embassy in Tripoli could not reach out to many of these teachers and doctors and nurses who were in various parts of Libya and unable to communicate with the embassy. And the only means of communication, as I discovered, was social media. We could only get through to many of these distant parts of Libya through Twitter, basically through Twitter. And nobody in the foreign ministry at that time, except perhaps for the public diplomacy division of the ministry, had set up a Twitter account. And I had always been fascinated at communication has been one of the areas that has fascinated me deeply through my career. And I felt, when I discovered this, that why should I not open my own Twitter account, my own Twitter handle, as it were. And that's what I did, much to the, I must say at that time, consternation of colleagues. And there was perhaps some, questioning, let us say, about why I should want to operate a Twitter account at this time. And I felt completely convinced about the fact that I was taking a right step. And that is another advice I'd like to give you. If you feel you're taking the right step and you are completely convinced about the merits of that decision, you must have the courage to go ahead and take it. And that's exactly what I did. I opened my Twitter handle, I set up my Twitter handle, and I began to operate it. And lo and behold, communication with so many of these people became so interactive, let me say. It was not just people were sending out SOSs for help. We were able to respond in real time, contact them, find out where they were, get help to them, bring them all together. I think it helped greatly. And of course, today in the government of India and all across the establishment and the private sector and the media, Twitter has become such a, normal way of communicating and functioning. And I'm glad to say that in retirement also I have kept my Twitter account, and I find it immeasurably useful to put out points of view, and particularly to talk about foreign policy and reach out to young people particularly. I'm not sure if this clock is working. It says only 2 minutes, I think. 2 minutes left. I was assuming that I had more time. And I would now briefly like, since I spoke about China, I would like to just contrast or perhaps draw similarities between our two countries. Here we are next door to each other. Here, where you sit in Kanpur, China is not really all that far away. We have national traits of character. Every country has it. And in my study of China and India, I found that there are so many similarities between our two peoples. We're diligent, hardworking, we respect our parents, we love our culture, our civilization, we believe in doing charity, in the emotion of gratitude. All that is common to us. But you see that China has progressed by leaps and bounds in the last 40 years, in the last 38 years or so. And in India, there is an equal impulse to achieve, to succeed, but there is a gap that we have to bridge between our two countries. And I think I would exhort all of you to study what China is doing in a very clinical and a very methodical way. And that's another thing as outliers that, of course, you have learned to do, to be clinical and methodical and be logical and to reason. And I think that's what you need to understand every day as to how this next door neighbor of ours has progressed so much, and how is it that we can aspire and equal that rate of progress and even better it. Because we have the strength, we have more, most of all, we have our democracy, we have our traditions of debate, of consensus, not just of argument, but of innovation, of ideas. And I would exhort all of us as Indians to listen more carefully to what is happening in the outside world, to be open to new ideas. I think there is no greater tragedy than a closed mind. We opened our economy 2.5 decades ago almost, and Indians have interacted with the outside world. I come from the state of Kerala, which perhaps is the most globalized state of India. We have interacted with the outside world, but never more than before would I say the moment is now that we have to open our minds and we have to learn about what others are doing, be willing to absorb, to understand history. When I look at the Chinese, they seem to understand their history so deeply I had a gardener who worked in the embassy when I was ambassador in China, and he was I would say, an expert. It was almost like he had a PhD on Chinese history. He knew about the dynasties, he knew about their achievements, he knew about their artistic achievements. He was the world's greatest expert that I have seen on Chinese porcelain, which is an extremely detailed, very abstruse subject. So like that, I would exhort all of you to develop a love of history, even as much as you develop a love of science and innovation and engineering and technology. I think that's the way we can build holistic personalities, that we can build great citizens for the future, and you are those citizens.